بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
Welcome to the Zaytuna College Convocation ceremony. Please welcome Qari Amar, Bellaha and Veronica Hernandez to the stage. Qari Amar will recite from Surah Maryam, chapter 19, followed by the translation read by Veronica, an incoming Zaytuna College student.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. كافها يا عين صاد. ذكر رحمة ربك عبده زكريا إذ نادى ربه نداء خفيا قال رب إني وهن العظم مني واشتعل الرأس شيبا ولم أكن بدعائك رب شقيا وإني خفت الموالي من ورائي وكانت امرأتي عاقرا فهب لي من لدنك وليا فهب لي من لدنك وليا يرثني ويرث من آل يعقوب واجعله رب رضيا يا زكريا إنا نبشرك بغلام اسمه يحيى إنا نبشرك بغلام اسمه يحيى لم نجعل له من قبل سميا قال رب أنى يكون لي غلام وكانت امرأتي عاقرا وقد بلغت من الكبر عتيا قال كذلك قال ربك هو علي هين وقد خلقتك من قبل ولم تك شيئا قال رب اجعل لي آية قال آيتك ألا تكلم الناس 3 ليال سويا فخرج على قومه من المحراب فأوحى إلى وسبحوا بكرة وعشيا يا يحيى خذ الكتاب بقوة وآتيناه الحكم صبيا وحنانا من لدنا وزكاة وحنانا من لدنا وزكاة وكان تقيا وبرا بوالديه ولم يكن جبارا عصيا وسلام عليه يوم ولد ويوم يموت ويوم يبعث حيا واذكر في الكتاب مريم إذ انتبذت من أهلها مكانا شرقيا فاتخذت من دونهم حجابا فأرسلنا إليها روحنا فتمثل لها بشرا سويا قالت إني أعوذ بالرحمن منك إن كنت تقيا قال إنما أنا رسول ربك ليهب لك غلاما زكيا قالت أنى يكون لي غلام ولم يمسسني بشر ولم أك بغيا قال كذلك قال ربك هو علي هين قال كذلك قال ربك هو علي هين ولنجعله آية للناس
In the name of God, the benevolent, the merciful. A recitation of the mercy of your Lord on the devotee Zacharias. He called on his Lord with a secret cry, saying, "My Lord, my bones have become feeble, and my hair has turned white, but I have never been disappointed in praying to you. Now I fear my relatives after me, as my wife is barren. So give me a son from you who will be my heir and succeed to the lineage of Jacob. And my Lord, make him acceptable. O Zacharias, we bring you good news of a son, whose name will be John, Yahya. He lives. We have not attributed it as a namesake before." He said, "My Lord, how will I have a son when my wife is barren and I have become decrepit with age? It will be so, your Lord says. That is easy for me, since I created you before when you had been nothing. My Lord, give me a sign. Your sign shall be that you not speak to people for 3 nights in a row." Then he came out from his prayer niche to his people and told them to praise God in the morning and the evening. John holds strongly to Scripture, and we gave him wisdom, even as a boy, and compassion from us, and innocence, and he was conscientious and kind to his parents, and he was not insolent or defiant. So peace be upon him, the day he was born and the day he dies, and the day he will be resurrected alive. And mention Mary in the book, when she withdrew from her people to a place in the east and secluded herself from them. We sent her our spirit, which appeared to her just like a man. She said, "I take refuge from you with a benevolent one, if you are conscientious." He said, "I am only a messenger from your Lord to give you a sinless son." She said, "How will I have a son when no man has touched me and I have not been unchaste?" He said, "It will be so." He said, "Your Lord says, it is easy for me, and we intend to make him a sign for humankind and a mercy from us. So the matter is decided."
Please welcome our guest speakers, Aisha Gray, Henry Blakemore, and Sheikh Alaeddin El-Bakri to the stage. We will now begin the faculty procession. Introducing the faculty members of Zaytuna College and our keynote speaker for this evening, Dr. Hatem Bazian, co-founder of Zaytuna College and faculty of Islamic Law and Jurisprudence and Arabic Studies. Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, co-founder of Zaytuna College and faculty of Islamic Law and Theology. Imam Zaid Shakir, co-founder of Zaytuna College and faculty of Islamic History and Islamic Law and Jurisprudence. Dr. James Donahue, President and Professor of Ethics of the Graduate Theological Union. Dr. Shireen Maskadia, Faculty of English Literature. Ustadh Abdullah bin Hamid Ali, Faculty of Islamic Law and Jurisprudence and Arabic Studies. And Imam Tahir Anwar, Faculty of Islamic Law and Jurisprudence. Please welcome Zaytuna College's inaugural class of 2014.
خير البقاع
ربنا صل على من حل في خير البقاع حل في خير البقاع
واسبل الستر علينا
Ladies and gentlemen, the 2010 new student convocation for Zaytuna College is now assembled. Our host for this evening's program, Dr. Hatem Bazian, will now share remarks on behalf of the faculty.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. By the name of Allah, the Merciful, the Beneficent. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. All praise belongs to Allah. On behalf of Zaytuna Board of Trustees, Management Committee, the co-founders, faculty, staff, and students, I call the Zaytuna College inaugural convocation into session and welcome all of our friends, community members, and academic colleagues into celebrating this historical and momentous occasion. What a blessed and joyous beginning for Zaytuna College, the first Muslim liberal arts college in America. And to open its doors nonetheless in the middle days of the month of Ramadan. By Allah, we did not plan on it that way. We were not thinking about Ramadan when we began to plan for the opening of the classes. With a full moon upon us tonight or tomorrow, while singing Tara al-Badru alayna, you cannot plan for all these things to fall into order as they have fallen for the opening of Zaytuna College. I will serve as your MC for this evening, but with your permission, I will do so after offering some of my own remarks. What does Zaytuna College mean to the American Muslim community, and why at this time in our history? To answer this question, I do need to give a brief idea about Muslim history in America. In reality, Zaytuna College should be thought of as a culmination of a long, complex, and sometimes painful Muslim encounter with America, both in the past and present. While not wanting to be part of the post-9/11 sudden Muslim discovery of Muslim roots in early America, nevertheless, Muslims and Islam itself have been part of this country before America became America. The documentary evidence of the pre-slave period is readily available, with a number of well-researched books on the subject. Take, for example, Kelly Thornton's African and African Americans and the Making of the Atlantic World. Lee Hershkowitz, The Troublesome Turk, an illustration of judicial process in New Amsterdam. Michael Gomez's book, Black Crescent, The Experience and Legacy of African Muslims in the Americas and Muslims in Early America. Richard Turner's Islam in the African American Experience. Thomas Kidd, American Christians and Islam, Evangelical Culture and Muslims from the Colonial Period to the Age of Terrorism. Also, I might say an MA thesis that I directly supervised, dealing with the Lutherans' interaction with Muslim Africans in early America. Furthermore, Muslims have been involuntarily brought into the New World as cargo in the hulls of ships during the slave period. Sylviana Diouf's, in her groundbreaking book, Servants of Allah, African Muslims Enslaved in the Americas, argued convincingly that somewhere between 10 and 20% of all slaves brought to the Americas during the transatlantic slave period were Muslims from West Africa. As a matter of fact, the first exclusionary act instituted in the New World by the Spanish Crown were directed at West African Muslims, put in place as early as 1526, and reinstated 5 times over a period of 50 years, a sure sign of their failure to keep the Mohammedans out, those early immigrants, just like some of the new policies attempting to keep the immigrants out of America today. African American Muslims and Caucasian reverts are at home in America and have built this country from the ground up, and for the African American community without being paid for it, and working from can't see in the morning until can't see at night. We can't speak of Islam in America without knowing who Job bin Solomon is, Prince Abdul Rahman, Bilali Muhammad, Umar ibn Said, and Alexander Webb. To name the should-be well-known few, but so you could include Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, Bari Shabazz, Warith al-Din Muhammad. This is American Muslim history, and this is America's history as well. It is factual to say about the immigrant that the newly arriving immigrant Muslims in the late 19th and 20th century contributed to the development of new Islamic institutions. But Islam was present in a variety of ways before their arrival, and it's something that we need to keep in mind. The doors of immigration made it possible for a reconnection to be established and the steady growth of Muslim communities across the country. Immigrant Muslims arrived primarily for economic reasons, education, as well as escaping persecution and war in their own homelands. Something similar to every other immigrant community in the United States. We are not an exception. Immigration is American Muslim history, and it is America's history as well. Zaytuna College is an effort to bring our collective narrative to light and begin to write our own stories with color, spices, and diversity. The story of Muslims and Islam in America is a very complex one and does not lend its hand into a neat binary representation with a simple line of demarcation. Muslim narrative is not constituted as one continuous line of us versus them, of us being outsiders intruding on a land and a society that belongs to them. If we understand, on the other hand, them to be Native Americans, then all of us are but an outsider, them, and truly are intruders in the mega narrative. But when the us is only thought to be a fixed racial and religious group with a singular triumphant historical trajectory, then the collective we must assert and struggle to shape a different America. Huntington's Clash of Civilization and Who Are We, the challenges to America's national identity, are an illustration of an America with a fixed and static national identity. Zaytuna College would be a new chapter, actually, in Howard Zinn's and Ron Takaki's history of America, one that is not preoccupied with the narrative of the powerful and their concerns, but one weaving the struggles, pains, and joys of everyday people. American Muslims, with other peoples in this country, are the new face of America in the 21st century. Racially and ethnically diverse, culturally open, globally aware, and multilingual. Some might find that as a threat. Let me be a little bit frank at this point. Zaytuna College is opening its door at one of the most difficult periods in America's history, and American Muslim history as well. Our nation is teetering on economic collapse, with economic hardship on Main Street, brought about by greed and irresponsibility on Wall Street. A very expensive and unmanageable healthcare system, leaving millions of our friends and neighbors out in the cold. Environmental disaster at every corner. An education system that at times have 50% dropout rates, which is considered to be success. An expanding prison system that makes our country a shameful #1 in the world in this category. 2 wars in Muslim-majority lands with a military budget more than the whole world combined. By the way, this is not the work of Muslims, and we can't blame the Quran for it. The American Muslim community, in addition to dealing with the above problems, finds itself under siege, facing a tide of xenophobia, racism, and discrimination. Islamophobia is not a theory. It is a reality that Muslims increasingly, on a daily basis, with various individuals and communities facing harassment at the borders, their ability to build religious institutions are challenged with well-orchestrated negative campaigns. At the core of it, it is contesting their Muslim Americanness and their sense of belonging in this country. This should not be allowed to stay. I am mentioning the above not to put a damper on our celebration. We should celebrate. rather to contextualize the need for Zaytuna College, since the question was framed, why Zaytuna College, and what we aspire to accomplish in the future. Our vision and mission are clear. If there is struggle, then we are ready to undertake the struggle. And we understand it that there is no free lunch in America. We have to struggle to make our own space and place on the dinner table. Judging earlier community struggle in America, I would say it is only our turn at constituting a new chapter in the long and diverse narrative called America. If we read When the Irish Became White, then we are currently experiencing the pains of Muslims defining for themselves the meaning of being American, which at times will be very difficult and filled with lost battles, but in the end, it will come to be, inshallah. Zaytuna College is the American Muslim community becoming part of the larger American dinner table with our own professional cook, colorful tablecloth, unique ingredients, and varied dishes. It represents the coming of age by a community that had witnessed massive transformation in demographic and in qualitative terms in such a short period of time. A higher education institution points toward a deep understanding of the structural building blocks required for the long-term development and survival of our community. Currently, we have almost 2,000 mosques, 500 schools, diverse array of nonprofit organizations that are all calling for graduates that would fill the needs of the community. Moreover, Zaytuna College, in its research arm, will begin to articulate the collective narrative of Muslims in America and record the stories of immigrants and reverts, the stories of crossing the borders to make it to America, and the border guards crossing you out of America, and the humble people who are silenced in triumphant histories. Zaytuna College, where American Muslim history is archived, researched, and published. Zaytuna College is the address where connecting with the Muslims on intellectual level, on a human level, on interfaith level, and working collectively on the many problems confronting humanity will become possible, inshallah, and it will come to be. Jazakumullah khair. We move to my other hat. I'm not going to change the color of the hat, but that's possible. Our first speaker is Rasheeda Plenty. Rasheeda Plenty is an incoming student who will now share her thoughts on starting Zaytuna College and will read a poem she prepared for this special evening. Please welcome Rasheeda Plenty.
Assalamu alaikum. I was talking to my friend Safiya about what I should say as I stood up here, and I asked her if I came on stage and jumped up and down and yelled, excited, excited, punctuated by an equal amount of nervous, nervous, would that be appropriate? Obviously, it wouldn't be, but the emotion is right on point. All of us in the inaugural class of Zaytuna College feel thrilled and excited, and yes, a little terrified too, but so incredibly happy to be a part of this historic moment and the history that will continue to be made as Zaytuna College progresses. Zaytuna College was an idea, and then this goal that was coming to fruition in the near future, and now the future is here, is beginning tomorrow. And while the reality of this is astounding, we all feel incredibly blessed to be a part of that astounding reality. So I wanted to share a poem I wrote a few months ago that I feel gets this kind of complex emotion across. And the title of this poem is Book. Book. Now that there are books, now that there are shops selling books, we come in to browse the stacks, come looking for the spine with God printed on it, the tell-all the world wrote in that sprawling hand. And what we find, Descartes and Ibn Ata'Allah, Martin Lings and Darwin, we eat. The taste, ink and bark with all the green pressed out, freshens the more we chew. The more we take notice, bewildered, when a soft rain begins to fall inside of us, when a tree quickens in our mouths, small leaves uncurling. as if someone took a seed, kneeled in the dirt of our bodies, and pressed that dry fleck down until it disappeared, until only the hole the thumb made in our earth remained. And we wait. Like people who've never seen trees, we stand gazing at our chests to see what will come of our bodies, this strange planting here. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you. Our next speaker is our keynote speaker for this evening. And before I introduce Dr. James Donahue, just to indicate the level of help, cooperation, open door that we had with the Graduate Theological Union. And this is actually foretold for us in the future to have this relationship here in Berkeley. James Donahue is President and Professor of Ethics of the Graduate Theological Union. Before coming to the GTU, he served as a Professor of Theology and Ethics, Dean of Students, and Vice President of Student Affairs at Georgetown University. Dr. Donahue is the co-author of Ethics, a Cross-Curriculum, a Practice-Based Approach, and a co-editor of Religion, Ethics, and Common Good. His research is focused on the construction of religious identity in a global world. Dr. Donahue holds a BA from the College of the Holy Cross, and a Master of Divinity from Princeton Theological Seminary, and a PhD from the Graduate Theological Union. Will you please help me and join me in welcoming Professor James Donahue.
Assalamu alaikum and Ramadan Mubarak. It is an enormous honor for me to be here today. I celebrate with the Zaytuna community today, its faculty, its students, its board, friends, supporters, and I congratulate all of you on this most important of occasions. When invited to give reflections at this event to mark the inaugural for Zaytuna, I was asked to offer words of support, challenge, and advice. What you are undertaking today, the inauguration of the first undergraduate college of Islamic learning and the liberal arts in the United States that seeks accreditation, is indeed groundbreaking and monumental. You are to be congratulated on this initiative. On behalf of the Graduate Theological Union and on behalf of all institutions of higher education, please know that we are supportive of your undertaking and assure you that we will be fellow travelers with you as you embark on this bold journey. As a professor of ethics, I would like to focus my brief remarks tonight on what I will call the ethical commitments or responsibilities that you, Zaytuna, as a religious institution of higher education, and that you will incorporate as part of your self-understanding as you move forward. These will be the reference points that will call out to you as you make decisions about your future. I speak of ethical commitments because I do believe that institutions, like individuals, have the capacity and the obligation to be ethical in their decisions and actions. This requires a fair amount of self-understanding. First and foremost, an understanding of the number one question for ethics. To whom and to what do I have responsibilities, and what are the nature of those responsibilities? I want to talk about these responsibilities as basically four. First of all, your responsibility to your mission. Secondly, your responsibility to what I will call the publics that serve the context for you. Third, the American context, which, as Professor Bazian mentioned, is critical and central to your identity. And fourth, the Zaytuna's responsibility to its students. Perhaps I can share some advice along the way. The significance and importance of this day cannot be understated. Zaytuna today is setting out on a path that seeks to preserve the most treasured and valued qualities of all human history, the truths of a religious tradition. And to do this at a time when the world needs so desperately the wisdom of these truths, and at a time when these truths are under challenge and assault. Zaytuna has laid claim to the ground of preserving and passing on the truths of Islam and engaging in the intellectual and academic journey of understanding how these truths will be transmitted into new cultures, new times, new generations. A daunting task indeed, and yet one that is so necessary for today. Without it, we will be severely diminished in our human capacity for human understanding, for truth, for social justice, and ultimately in our search for God. The journey that Zaytuna has begun is one that has been undertaken by others before it, albeit in different religious traditions and in different times. I'd like to reference my own experience as an example. I am a product of Jesuit education in the Roman Catholic tradition in the United States. From high school through college and graduate school and into my professional career as a professor of theology and ethics, I have been involved with and associated with Jesuit institutions of higher education. The Society of Jesus, the Jesuits, were founded by St. Ignatius Loyola in 16th century Spain, and the Jesuits were distinctive in that they focused primarily on the teaching ministry. There are today 28 colleges, Jesuit colleges and universities in the United States, and they are among the most distinguished institutions in higher education. Georgetown, Boston College, Fordham, Loyola Marymount, Loyola University of Chicago, Santa Clara University, and the University of San Francisco locally. Zaytuna shares many of the same commitments that are core and are at the heart of Jesuit education. One, a commitment to the scholarly transmission of the classical disciplines. For the Jesuits, it was Latin, Greek, and the classic literature. Two, the preservation and transmission of the Catholic theological tradition. And three, the formation of men and women for leadership in the contemporary world of which they are a part. An essential tenet of all Jesuit education, no matter what level, is the idea that the goal of Jesuit education is at its core to create men and women for others. If you talk to anyone who's been to a Jesuit school, and just having talked to Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, he is a graduate of Georgetown Prep School, a Jesuit institution, the term men and women for others is always something that will be recognized. So too, Zaytuna shares in the essential undertakings that are articulated in your own mission, a very elegant and powerful mission indeed. It says, Zaytuna College aims to educate and prepare morally committed, professional, intellectual, and spiritual leaders who are grounded in the Islamic scholarly tradition and conversant with cultural currents and critical issues shaping modern society. Your mission, this mission, provides the first reference point for your responsibilities and ethical commitments. As an institution, it will be imperative for Zaytuna to be faithful to its mission. The core is the belief and the inherent challenge both to preserve a tradition and to translate that tradition in new ways to new audiences in new times. This, of course, is the challenge of all institutions of higher education, but most particularly to those religious institutions that seek to carry on a set of religious truths, some which find translation into the contemporary cultural context easily, and others do not. Of course, we all realize that all the points of view involved in the transmission of a religious tradition have advocates and detractors who are passionate and increasingly public about their views. It's one thing to carry on scholarly debate within the academy. It's quite another to carry on this debate on CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, or on the internet. And yet that is the challenge in front of us. These distinctions and strategies are ones that Zaytuna will be confronted with as it goes forward in its new mission. The second set of commitments and responsibilities is what I'll call, and what the University of Chicago theologian David Tracy referred to as the three publics that really set and shape the context for religious theology, higher education, religious higher education. The three publics are the academy, the tradition, and the community at large. First, the academy. Zaytuna has a responsibility to the academy, which means that the framework for assessing decisions and the quality of intellectual merit resides in the canons and standards of discourse, reason, and legitimation that serve to organize the fundamental undertakings of the academic work of Zaytuna. This is as it should be and needs to be in any academic setting. There need to be standards of acceptability for what counts as arguments, evidence, and reasons for the establishment and advancing of intellectual ideas and claims. And I get very, very frustrated with the nature of public discourse, where things like arguments, evidence, and reasons seem to have very little place in the public discourse. This might, knowledge, for Zaytuna, knowledge and ideas are the currency of your work. Again, this might seem obvious to all of us in higher education, but as you might imagine, these issues can become particularly conflicted when there are claims supported by the warrants of reason on the one hand, and those supported by the warrants of faith on the other. How faith and reason are understood and held in mutuality is the key ingredient for the legitimacy of any religious college or university. So too with Zaytuna. There will be times when the interpretations of the texts and traditions will clash with the interpretations of the context of contemporary culture. The test of a university and its primary ethical commitment is to develop capacities for adjudicating such conflicts and clashes. This will not be easy. My advice is to learn from those who have been on this path before and those who continue to be on the path, those religious institutions for whom this has been extremely relevant. It will also require paying attention to the demands and requirements of accreditation that all academics in the U.S. face. I know that at WASC, the Western Association for Schools and Colleges, is very enthusiastic about Zaytuna, and that there are already conversations about the accreditation process. The accreditation process, where one is asked to articulate learning outcomes, learning goals, and measures for assessment for programs and courses, can be very helpful to Zaytuna moving forward. The second public that Tracy mentions, the tradition. I do not need to tell this audience that the sacred texts, the values, the rituals, the prayers and practices, and all other forms of the Islamic tradition are the cornerstone of what it means to be a Muslim. The task of Zaytuna will be to define itself as a place where Muslims and others can come to engage in the conversations, the research, and the modes of inquiry that will assess what constitutes authentic Islam and provide models for enabling others, both within and outside the Muslim community, to make such determinations. Zaytuna is an academic institution, a college. It is not a mosque. It is not a community center. It is not a gathering place for religious rituals. It is not a cultural center, although elements of each of these will surely be part of Zaytuna. The challenge for Zaytuna will be to determine in what ways it will serve the Islamic tradition and how it can enable that tradition both to preserve and to grow. Its task is what Erik Erikson, the great psychologist, referred to as generative, to preserve the tradition while passing it on to the next generations. The pressures for Zaytuna to be many things for many people will be significant. It is best served when it follows its academic core mission. Zaytuna is a special kind of academic institution, one that serves the head as well as the heart, faith as well as reason, tradition as well as culture. I can say from my experience at the Graduate Theological Union, which shares many of the same commitments as Zaytuna, that this is exactly the kind of institution that is needed in our day and our time. We live at a time when there are no artificial separations of self and society. Rather, there's a thrust towards integration and holism that is required for living successfully. The third public is the community at large. Zaytuna will be a valued asset for this community. Obviously for the Muslim community, but also for the community of all serious-minded and engaged citizens who seek answers for the most profound challenges and complex issues. The fact that Zaytuna is committed to an interreligious and interfaith focus in its understanding of Islam is important. This will create a set of conversation partners and focus the inquiries that will greatly enrich not only the students of Zaytuna, but I can attest from the perspective of the GTU that it will make Zaytuna an enormously valuable asset to the local, national, and global community. The third commitment and ethical responsibility that I want to talk about is one that Professor Bazian referred to earlier, what it means for Zaytuna to be an Islamic institution of higher education in the American context. Your decision to become the first indigenous Muslim college in the U.S. puts it squarely in the American context. Because of this, your ethical commitments and responsibilities will require you to think through what is entailed by these commitments. While there's certainly no one single measure that makes an academic institution uniquely American, there are several values that I will suggest for consideration, and we could have an extended conversation in the future about others. Zaytuna will need to determine how to incorporate and respond to these in its work. I will lump these under a category that's rather imprecise called democratic values. The idea of democracy is key to understanding American higher education, religious or otherwise. And there are certain inherent values in that democracy. America is a society that's focused on rights and liberties, natural rights, civil rights, political rights, human rights, economic rights. It's a society that's committed to religious pluralism. There are many different ways of believing what is true and what is good, and pluralism is inherent in American democracy. America is a pragmatic society. I don't mean utilitarian society, but there's a practicality to American consciousness, life, and faith. The way things work in practice is very important in this country. There's an institutionalization instinct in this country, and Zaytuna is to be applauded for being clear about its institutional identity. The values of democratic justice, reciprocity, equality, laws, these will be incredibly important issues that the faculty, students, and all of us in higher education with Zaytuna will be working through. There's also a sense in America of novelty. We're the frontier. Place things like the new become very, very important. Now, I'm not advocating for any of these, but I'm saying that as Zaytuna grapples with what it means to be an Islamic higher education institution in America, these issues will be part of the currency of the conversations that will be necessary. This will be a great ethical challenge for Zaytuna. The last responsibility that Zaytuna has as a religious institution of higher education is to its students. This is Zaytuna's #1 responsibility. I want to look at all of you. You are the reason Zaytuna exists. As a former dean of students, I can tell you that the energy, the ideas, the commitment, and the future, it's all about you. It's all about the students. The task for Zaytuna College, to listen to the students, to support them, to embrace them, to inspire them, to correct them when necessary. This will make the difference. This will make Zaytuna great. It will be so. My comments are meant to inspire you, students. You are embarking on a wonderful and amazing journey. Go forward with great enthusiasm, great confidence, and a smile on your face. You are not alone. Everyone in this room is beside you, behind you, and with you in your journey. May God bless each of you.
Our next speaker is Virginia Gray Henry. Virginia Gray Henry's studies and expertise revolve around Islamic spiritual issues. An active publisher, editor, scholar, educator, and community interfaith facilitator. She currently directs the interfaith publishing houses, Vans Vita and Quinta Essentia, academic, nonprofit, and educational charities concerned with world religions, art, spirituality, and symbolism, with an emphasis on Islam. She has a BA from Sarah Lawrence College in Art History and World Religions, an MA in Education, specializing in curriculum development. She studied Arabic and Islamic Studies at the American University of Cairo and Al-Azhar University from 1969 to 1979. In 1985, she became a research fellow at Cambridge University and began her doctoral work at the Faculty of Divinity at Canterbury, Kentucky. Tonight, Ms. Blackmore will read the poem, The Meeting Place, written by Martin Lings. Please welcome Virginia Gray Henry Blackmore.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. What a profound honor to be present at this historic occasion of the opening of Zaytuna College and to be asked to read The Meeting Place by Martin Lings, also known to us as Abu Bakr Sirajuddin. We are all deeply grateful to Dr. Lings, former curator of Oriental manuscripts at the British Museum and Library, for his masterpiece on the life of the Prophet Muhammad according to the earliest sources, the first account in English I had ever read, written from the point of view of pure love and the spirit. This wonderful seerah went into 17 languages, and we also published a special edition for the Pakistani Army. We are indebted to Martin Lings for his magnificently illustrated splendors of the Holy Quran, to which he dedicated the last decade of his life and scholarship, as well as for his final, A Return to the Spirit, to which Shaykh Hamza contributed. A personal favorite, which of this exemplary Muslim, was his book, Symbol and Archetype, a study in the meaning of existence. He once told me that the reason we find nature beautiful, the ocean wave, the clouds, is that their archetypes are in heaven, and we are recalling the home that exiles crave. The poem which was chosen for me to read this evening refers to our return to the Spirit, using symbols for the fitra, our first nature. The Meeting Place, written on the Atlantic coast of Cornwall. O blessed meeting place of land and sea, of earth and water, rock and ocean wave. What is thy secret that we find in thee? From the first home, from the first hour, the home that exiles crave. Intimate art thou, yet mysterious, and though thy welcome unreserved we have, we must to thee conform, not thou to us. For thou art aged with surpassing eld, wherefrom to us a majesty is lent. And thou art ever young. Who hath beheld thy beauty without joy of wonderment? Our souls beneath its spell are purified, content with little, childlike, innocent, O world newborn at every ebb of tide. It is enough to cast off clothes and wear the sunlight as we walk upon the strand, enough to hear the surge, to breathe the air, to feel beneath our naked feet the sand, to give thanks for the great and for the small, for the vast ocean, towering heads of land, and gathered shells and pebbles, rich in all. A cloud hath thrown its shadow to our side of this calm haven. All beyond is bright. See through the cleft where the dark rocks divide, the splendor of that cliff face in full light of dazzling sun. It beckons, we draw near, and gulls upon its ledges, gray and white, open their wings and voice our presence here. Many fly out, each in its orbit, wheeling their cries that on the rocks reverberate, unearthly strange, thy secret half revealing. Proclaim to us that shores are ultimate, that sea cliffs are the edge of the unknown, but we, not they, thy secret bear innate within our hearts, in fullness, we alone. For man's first nature is a meeting place where two worlds intermingle, yet are not joined. Towards the infinite is turned his face, and winged ones from the soul fly out beyond, nor come they back save yet again to go. Drawn by the inward deep, the heavens respond, tides of the spirit flow and ebb and flow. That's Martin Lings. What we loved and love most about Sheikh Abu Bakr Sirajuddin was his luminous presence, his calm and sobriety, his generosity of heart, his state of faqr, or holy poverty and humility, and his constant remembrance of God. When he spoke to any one of us, he addressed our highest and truest natures. The fitra mentioned in the poem as man's first nature, a meeting place where two worlds intermingle yet are not joined. This always gave us the chance to rise into, answer from, and reside in the highest aspect of our beings. Just as Saint Seraphim of Seraph addressed others as your godliness, and the Japanese add sen to the names of those spoken to, and then bow to the divine nature within. So too in Arabic, One doesn't say sir or madam, but hadritic, your presence of God. We loved that when Martin Lings spoke to us as the persons we really are, who we strive to remember we are, we then experienced that original state. We rose up and answered from that state. We should all follow Sheikh Abu Bakr's example in addressing this fitra in everyone, in our children, and in all others of any faith. For we all do reside together in our glorious bodies of the resurrection called the Jazat al-Baqi in Arabic. Thank you very much.
Jazakumullah khair. I didn't want to mention this. It was not part of Virginia's biography, but she's an 8th generation descendant of Patrick Henry's. Give me liberty or give me death. So you know exactly the American lineage that she represents, and we are honored to have her with us today. Our next speaker is one of the co-founders of Zaytuna College. Imam Zaid Shakir is an American Muslim who came of age during his country's civil rights struggle. And he brings sensitivity about race and poverty, as well as scholarly discipline to his faith-based work. He's the co-founder of Zaytuna College and has studied the traditional Islamic sciences for several years in the Muslim world. He also holds a master's degree in political science from Rutgers University in New Jersey. Would you please welcome Imam Zaid Shakir.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Welcome to all of our guests, all of our supporters, all of our well-wishers, and all of the kind, gentle, courageous, visionary souls who have assembled this evening. I was asked to offer some advice to the students, and I was also asked to do it within a very short time. So to avoid going over time, I wrote a few remarks here, and I'll limit myself to what I have written here. Many of us assembled before you on this stage, and many of you seated before us in this room have spent our lives playing, wrestling, sometimes fighting with ideas. Our reflections, contemplations, meanderings, and ruminations sometimes led us to the truth. Oftentimes, they led us to dead ends. The truth we did find, we were sometimes blessed to translate into words flowing from our pens. It is our fervent prayer and hope that the truth you students will write will flow from the pen of your hearts. For the heart, when it is upright, will always bring forth the truth. My advice to you is that you always stand for, stand on, and defend the truth. Let the light of truth illuminate your path. Let the quest for truth push you forward as you move down this challenging road and as you move down the road of life. As you go forward from this auditorium, ever heed God's counsel when he says, يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وكونوا مع الصادقين. O you believers, be ever mindful of God and keep yourself in the presence of the people of truth. Keep yourselves with the people of truth and be yourselves ramparts of truth that others may always be able to take refuge in. In conclusion, I will offer you some time-honored advice. One of my favorite poems, although it is written by a person who is not one of my favorite poets, Rudyard Kipling. How he got from take up the white man's burden, bring forth the best you breed, to if is a mystery to me. But as I reflected on this poem, I wanted to relate in the context of my remarks two lines actually. But as I reflected on the poem, in these days and times, it contained really precious advice. And although it's oft repeated, and I'm sure many of you, if not all of you, have heard it at your junior high school graduation and your high school graduation, but I think you will receive it in a new and unique light on this occasion as our country stands at the precipice it currently stands at. So he says, if you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you. If you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too. If you can wait and not be tired by waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating, and yet don't look too good nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken twisted by knaves to make a trap of fools. Let me repeat that line. If you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap of fools, or watch the things you've gave your life to broken, and stoop and build them up with worn-out tools, if you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss, and lose and start again at your beginnings, and never breathe a word about your loss. If you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there is nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can walk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings nor lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you but none too much, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it, and which is more, you'll be a man, my son. Assalamu alaikum.
Jazakumullah khair, Imam Zaid. And that's a very difficult advice to keep. Our next speaker is Shaykh Alaeddin al-Bakri. Shaykh Alaeddin al-Bakri began his study of Islam at a young age in North Africa and continued his education in the Islamic sciences in Jordan, learning from preeminent scholars in the Muslim world. He serves as an Imam at the West Valley Muslim Association in Saratoga, California. He is the founding board member of Imam Central in Chicago and has actively participated in the establishment of several Muslim community centers, mosques, Islamic schools, and other institutions in North America, including contributing to Zaytuna College. He is also the founder of My Enlightenment, a nonprofit geared to provide education to community through the online lectures and classes. Shaykh Alaeddin al-Bakri will lead the Congregational Recitation of al-Fatiha, the opening chapter of the Quran, to mark the ceremonial beginning of Zaytuna College. Do you please welcome Shaykh Alaeddin al-Bakri.
I have the mic, I have a good crowd, and I have 10 minutes. I think I can raise $100,000. I became known for that. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. I was asked to recite with you Surah al-Fatiha. But as in our tradition, intentions are very important. So I will share with you what intention I would have so that you might share these intentions with me as you're reciting Surah al-Fatiha. Surah al-Fatiha, as I like to translate it, as the opener. Some people translate it as the opening. I like to translate it as the opener. And that makes it very appropriate for our night as we're opening and we're starting the first class of Zaytuna College. Surah al-Fatiha starts with a phrase that you would hear from Muslims very frequently. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of God, the most beneficent, the most merciful. Interestingly, this phrase, in every other surah, in every other chapter of the 114 chapters in the Quran, is extra. It's something that you're recommended to recite. But in Surah al-Fatiha, it counts as verse number 1. Verse number 1 of chapter number 1 of the Holy Scriptures of the Quran tells you who is the sender of this message. As Allah calls the Quran the message, al-Kitab. At the time of Arabia, they didn't have books like we have today. They used to write on scrolls, and they used to write messages. A small message used to be called Risala. A heavy message used to be called Kitab. So Allah calls the Quran Kitab, a message, a heavy message. When someone sends message to someone, there has to be the sender, the receiver, and the message itself, the subject. And if you're lucky, you will get a header or a title that will summarize for you the message and what this message is all about. Interestingly, in the Quran, verse number 1 of chapter number 1 tells you who's the sender. Bismillah, in the name of God. Interestingly too, the last verse of the Quran of chapter 114 tells you who is the receiver. Min al-jinnati wan-nas. Who is the human beings and the jinn. And the subject is the chapters themselves, the message, but we were lucky to get a header or to get a title, and that is Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. God has chosen of all of his names and qualities, 2 names, the most merciful, the most compassionate, so that you will get an idea what this message is all about in a nutshell. So if you don't have the time to read it, or you don't have the knowledge to translate it, at least you will get what it's all about. And that's compassion and mercy. And that's what makes Surah al-Fatiha very significant. I will read today Surah al-Fatiha with the intention that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, God, will give the wisdom to the faculty, to the members, and to the students to understand this message in its entirety. For often, half of the truth is always against the truth. Be able to understand Islam in its entirety, comprehensively, inshallah. Surah Al-Fatiha is very unique because it's the only chapter in the Quran that was revealed twice. The very same chapter twice. One time in Mecca and one time in Medina. So it holds in it. It has to be understood within the context of Mecca and within the context of Medina. And as the world has evolved and as things have changed, we're no more living in the Meccan period, no more we are living in the Medina period, but we're living in a combination of both periods with more. So I read Surah Al-Fatiha with the intention that Zaytuna College will be able to grasp and teach the Islam in the context that it lives in, as Islam, as Surah Al-Fatiha was revealed both in Mecca and in Medina, and it has both understandings. I read Surah Al-Fatiha with the intention that, as one of its names is Ash-Shafiyah, one time companions of the Prophet were traveling, and they stopped by a tribe, and they asked for food. They didn't give them. So they didn't fight them back. So when they saw that they were righteous people and they didn't fight them back, they ran after them and they called them and they said, "We noticed that you are good people. We fought you and you didn't fight us back. Our leader is boiling with fever. A scorpion has stunned him. So would any of you have anything to read to heal him? We see that you're good people." So they said, yes, one of them. He went to him, put his hand on his forehead, and recited Surah Al-Fatiha. It describes that he instantly was healed, and he stood up and he started running. So the other companions said to him, "We didn't know that you were a good healer." He said, "I didn't know that either. I just put my hand on his forehead and I recited the most dear surah to me, which was Surah Al-Fatiha." I hope that I read this in surah with the intention that we will not just always be emotional and fighting back. Because sometimes when you don't fight back, you teach your enemy the biggest lesson that they need to learn, that you're not like them. And I read it, inshallah, so that we are able to have this love in us, not only towards our friends and those that we love, but those that we consider as also our enemies. I read it with the intention that Zaytuna will heal the wounds of the Muslim community, will heal the wounds of the general public too, of the American society, through the education and the knowledge that it will teach to others. One of the names of Al-Fatiha is Al-Wafiyah and Al-Kafiyah, the fulfilling and the sufficient. I pray, inshallah, and I read Surah Al-Fatiha with the intention that Zaytuna College will be good enough and will be sufficient and will fulfill its mission that it stood up for. Surah Al-Fatiha is used in different cultures for different reasons. In Sudan, if you ever found and went to a Sudanese funeral, when the people who come to offer their condolences come, they don't go forward and they shake the hand of the person and hug him. No, they walk, then they stop 6 feet apart, and both of them raise their hands and recite Surah Al-Fatiha to the deceased to bring him life, light, and forgiveness to his grave. I read Surah Al-Fatiha with the intention that Zaytuna will bring life, light, and forgiveness, inshallah, to us. In the Palestinian culture, when someone decides to get married, the family of the groom goes to the family of the bride, and they sit down together, and once they officially request for the hand of the bride, and they officially answer with yes, they both raise their hands and read Surah Al-Fatiha, and that's the first step in the process of marriage. So we often refer to two people who are engaged as they have read their Fatiha. So I hope that tonight will be a wedding for Zaytuna College, inshallah, and a happy occasion as we will read it, inshallah, so that they will be united with the community and its needs, and they will be united with the truth, inshallah. Finally, in India, in Pakistan and in Afghanistan, they oftenly recite Surah al-Fatiha for protection. And they read it when they wake up in the morning, when they start riding their car, when they're about to go through a serious task or mission. I read Surah al-Fatiha with the intention that Allah will protect Zaytuna College from all obstacles and from all enemies, outward and inward, as sometimes we become our own worst enemies. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. My dad, every time I was about to do something, he used to say, stop. May Allah have mercy on his soul. And he used to say, let's read Surah al-Fatiha before we do this. So I would say, let's read Surah al-Fatiha before we do this inauguration, inshallah. I will do it in a way, I know some of you know how to recite it. Some of you don't know how to recite it. So I was given different suggestions as how to do this. I think I will go with that. All of us, we recite it together, inshallah, in one voice. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين جزاكم الله خيرا بارك الله.
Jazakallah khair, Imam Alaeddin al-Bakri. And you don't need to apologize for raising all the funds for our schools and mosques. And I don't think we will object if he all of a sudden wants to raise $100,000 for us. I will not object. So. Our next speaker is the third co-founder of Zaytuna College. Shaykh Hamza Yusuf is an American convert to Islam who studied for several years under leading scholars in the Muslim world. He is the co-founder of Zaytuna College in California and has translated into modern English several classical Arabic texts and poems. He also advises Stanford University's program in Islamic Studies and the Center of Islamic Studies at the Graduate Theological Union in Berkeley. Would you please welcome Shaykh Hamza Yusuf.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم الحمد لله. All praise is due to God alone. This tash that was made has a symbol on it of this is a symbol that's found all over the Muslim world. You'll find it, in fact, in Morocco, you find it over the doors of the Moroccan houses. You find it in mosques in India, in Syria, and it's a symbol of the Prophet's sandal. And it's a sandal actually that's honored in the Topkapi Palace in Istanbul. The sandal is actually there, and this is the form of the sandal. And the Muslims have always honored the sandal of the Prophet. And it's said that his two sandals were the sandals of fear and hope. And these are the two sandals that are necessary to walk the path of life, to have the sandal of fear and the sandal of hope. It's basically paradise in the inferno. And so we set out on this path with fear and with hope. We set out on this path with fear that our intentions might not be up to the standard that they need to be. I know that Fatima al-Fihriya, when she founded the Qarawiyin University, which is our teacher, Ustadh Abdullah, is a graduate of the Qarawiyin. when she actually donated the land to build the university there, which is the oldest university in the world probably, in the true sense of that word. She fasted the entire time that the place was being built in hopes that it would be accepted from God as a place of learning. And we find many, many stories of the early people, the type of sincerity and devotion that they displayed in doing these things. So we are trusting, and I don't want to make a claim because the Quran says, وَمَنْ يَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ فَهُوَ حَسْبُهُ. Whoever truly trusts in God, God will suffice. But I come from a tradition that warns us of making claims. And that's where the hope comes in. We hope that we're truly trusting in God. To make the claim of I am indeed trusting in God, like the men who arrived in the pilgrimage from Yemen and they had no provision with them, and the Quran tells people to take provision on your journey. And when Sayyidina Umar saw them, he said, "Who are you?" And they said, "We're the mutawakkilun, we're the people that trust in God." He said, "No, you're the muta'akkilun, you're the people that need to beg for food." And then he said, "Tazawwadu, take provision." And then the Quran reminds us, but the best provision is the provision of piety, a word, unfortunately, that has been almost removed from the English language. It's become almost a historical anomaly, this idea of piety. And I remember my dear sister, and I think it's auspicious that, and I don't say this lightly, I think it's auspicious that a direct descendant of Patrick Henry is here with us in this convocation, because he really started the American Revolution, and this is part of the American Revolution. What's happening here today is part of the American Revolution, because America began as a place that wanted to depart from the ways of the old world. And the ways of the old world was fighting each other over religious doctrine. This was a place that they wanted to see people actually able to express their faith. And Patrick Henry was amongst those, and there was an early debate that wanted to see Christianity as the religion of America, and he was a profoundly devout Christian. And he actually argued for having religious tests. There were a group of founding fathers, and they're quoted constantly by a certain segment of an extreme religious right in this country, arguing that America is a Christian nation. But there was another group of founding fathers that actually argued against that, and they were the ones that won the day. And in some ways, we're back in that struggle again of defining what America is. And there are some people that want to retain a vision of America that perhaps never was. My own, and we were talking about the Catholics earlier, and I completely agree with Dr. Donahue that we have an immense amount of knowledge in previous religious experiences, and the Catholic religious experience in this country is one of the richest, as well as the Jewish religious experience in this country, for Muslims to benefit from. But my own family, who were on my father's side, were Catholic, Irish Catholic immigrants to this country, and they built churches. They built, my great-grandfather was a patron of St. Joseph's Catholic College in Philadelphia, and my grandfather graduated from that college. On my mother's side, we have my great-grandfather, Peter Georgiopoulos, who they changed the name to George, built the first Orthodox church in San Francisco at the turn of the 20th century. So I come from a family that has a rich tradition of expressing religious faith in an environment that was antagonistic to that faith, because the Orthodox faith 100 years ago was not really an acceptable form of Christianity to many, many people in this country. And the Irish Catholics probably suffered as much as any minority that's come to the shores, with the possible exception of the African American community. But the Irish American community suffered greatly for their faith and for their beliefs. So this country is about liberty, and what was articulated in starting this revolution was give me liberty or give me death. That liberty was more precious to that man who made that statement. And the greatest freedom is the freedom of conscience, the ability to actually say what you think, to be able to believe something and to articulate that belief and not be ashamed of it, not have to hide that. We have Muslims in the United States of America right now that are hiding their faith, that have changed their names, that use other names. This is what my great-grandfather, who dropped the O from Hanson, my grandfather's name was Hanson, but his grandfather's name was O. Hanson. And they hid their Irish roots because it was very difficult to be Irish in this country in a certain strata of American society. My Greek grandfather changed his name from Georgiopoulos to George and hid his Greek roots. He was a light-skinned Greek, and he was able to be somebody who said he was actually from France until the 60s enabled him to reassert his Greek heritage, and then he actually participated in building the Greek church now in San Anselmo in Marin County. He was the president of that church. But it took an evolution in American consciousness for him to feel comfortable enough to assert the fact that he was a Greek Orthodox immigrant to the United States of America. We would have thought that we have transcended this problem, that we've arrived. Barack Hussein Obama is president of the United States. We were at the inauguration in the church setting, and we had a woman in a hijab who actually was part of the ceremony, and Barack Obama's grandmother, a Luo tribeswoman from Kenya, was sitting in the front pew wearing a traditional Kenyan Muslim hijab. And I'm thinking, subhanallah, you know, glory to God, mashallah. But ground zero has erupted this debate. And this country is really, I think, struggling again about who it is and what it is, who we are as a people. We're in a time of incredible confusion for many, many people. Our young people, when we look out, I mean, just coming to this convocation, and we wanted something dignified. And I said my only criterion was it wasn't pretentious, but I wanted something dignified because religion is about dignity. It's about the dignity of human beings. We are not animals. We are the meeting place between the terrestrial and the celestial. We're something exalted. We're something extraordinary. We have language. We produce language. We write poetry. We have feelings that other creatures do not share with us. We have the concept of infinity. And yet outside, in one of the greatest universities in the United States of America, we have frat houses and people coming, just walking up the street, the sights that we see. For me, it saddens me. I don't know how anybody could be happy about seeing young people with such a loss of dignity for me. I see this as a loss of dignity, and I see it really, it's becoming a global phenomenon. The t-shirt and the shorts have become the global uniform of globalization. And it wasn't that long ago when just dress and the dignity of dress, if you look in traditional societies everywhere, people had such dignity in the way they dressed. Even the poorest of people dressed with such dignity. Aboriginal peoples. Some Native American tribes used to call off conflicts if it rained because they didn't want the feathers to get dampened. That it was more important to be dignified in the battle than to actually fight the battle. Great American poet that I like began a song. Wise man looking in a blade of grass, young man looking at the shadows that pass, poor man looking through painted glass for dignity. Dignity. That really is what education is about. It's what, not just higher learning, but from the primary school, treating children with dignity. We know what harm now is caused by humiliating children. Imam al-Ghazali, the great articulator of Islam, said never scold a child in front of other children, but always take it aside. Because he said, when you shame a child in front of children, you create humiliation in their hearts. And he said those children will lose the sense of shame. And they will actually get worse and worse. We have an immense task ahead of us. Zaytuna College is an attempt. Its success is going to be entirely determined by the support of the community. There's immense support in our community so far. It's nowhere near what we need, but we're looking forward to it, and inshallah, trusting in God to the best of our ability. I want to thank many, many people who have come here. I want to thank, I saw Rabbi Lerner, Michael Lerner, come in, and I'm so glad to see him well and healthy. Rabbi Lerner was in my personal prayers when he was, when I found out that he was sick, so it's really an honor to have him here with us. And many other people, I think Dr. Donahue's, I really feel like what he articulated, and you are a tough audience because I would have given him a standing ovation, hands down, but it was just such an incredible... It was such an incredible articulation on many different levels, and so much went into it, and I was just honored by the fact that he took so much time to put that thought into it. And I want to study it, and I really hope the other faculty members and the students look at it and really think about what he was saying, because this is a man who's coming with an immense amount of experience in the very things that we're going to be grappling with. And GTU, the Graduate Theological Union, has, in some ways, the seed was planted by Sister Maryam Farina many, many years ago. She's here today. She is a devout Catholic nun who's also a lover of Imam al-Ghazali, and actually wrote her dissertation looking at Imam al-Ghazali and St. Thomas Aquinas. And she came to me over 10 years ago, and we had a meeting in a yurt. And there are meetings in life that you don't forget, and then there's meetings that you forget, and then there's meetings you wish you could forget. But that was a meeting that I could not forget, because she really planted a seed. She said, at the Graduate Theological Union, we have all of these religions on the top of this hill teaching their traditions, and she says, you're 1/4 of the world's population. Where are the Muslim colleges? Where's the Muslim seminary to teach Muslims? You need to do it. Zaytuna should think about that. And that was really a turning point that came from Sister Marianne. And I really thank you and honor you for coming today in support of what we're trying to do. And now this is a courageous group of young people. They really are, because religion is about faith, and their presence here really is an act of faith, because they're coming into something that is new. We're all starting new. And also some of the parents, not all of them needed their parents' permission, but some of the parents that allowed their students, I mean, we had some students that could have easily gone to Ivy League colleges, and they chose to come here and support this endeavor. It's a historical group of young people, and we thank them for honoring us in placing their trust in their Lord, but also, we would say, and then in us. So we really honor that. Many, many other people I see here that I want to thank for coming and supporting us. We've had immense support in the Muslim community. Zaytuna is known now all over the world. And when I was at the Azhar University, which is one of the oldest universities, they have over 300,000 students at Al-Azhar, which just floored me. I had no idea they had that many students. But it's one of the oldest universities in the Muslim world. And the Azharis, the ones that begin from that early period and go through an incredibly rigorous training, and they're actually quite stunning as scholars. They really are. Al-Azhar has fallen on hard times. They're really trying to reinvigorate it, but they want a relationship with us. I was also in Morocco. I just was a guest at the King's lectures there in the Durus al-Hassaniya. The minister there of religious endowments also said that we are behind you, and the Qarawiyyin University, which is a great Islamic university, is also looking to establish ties with us. I mean, this is incredible. It's just a blessing. And in light of that, I just want to remind myself and all of you, we've heard a lot of poetry, but you're going to hear one more poem. And it's important because poetry, to me, religion without poetry is like the nuclear waste. It becomes toxic if you don't have religion with poetry. All of the companions of the Prophet, the great ones that we know of, were poets. I have a book called Shi'r al-Sahaba, the poetry of the companions of the Prophet. They all wrote poetry. The Prophet loved poetry. Once he was riding on a camel with a companion, and he said, do you know any of the poetry of Ibn Abi Salt? He was a pre-Islamic poet. And he said, yes. And the Sahabi said, I was ashamed to recite something, so I just recited 2 lines. And the Prophet said, Ihi, let's hear some more. And he said, so I recited 2 more, and then he said, Ihi, let's hear some more. And he said, I kept going until I recited over 100 verses. In another narration, Sayyidina Omar asked somebody if they knew the poetry of Ibn Abi Sulma, one of the great poets of the Jahili period. And one of them, Ibn Abbas, said yes. And he said, let's hear it. And he kept reciting it until they heard the adhan of Fajr. And then he said, let's hear some Quran. So the prerequisite of learning Quranic tafsir or exegesis is to master the Jahili poetry. It's a prerequisite. And some of it is quite ribald. It shocked me when I was studying. In fact, there's a whole slew of erotic poetry in the Arabic tradition that is very shocking to a young convert studying Arabic. And I wasn't married at the time, so reading this poetry was actually quite racy, really. But they were certainly not prudes, that early community. And when religion becomes prudish, it also becomes dangerous. It really does. And so we really want to see a beautiful type of Islam emerge in America. And it will, and it is. The Prophet once asked, some people were going to a wedding, and he said, is there any entertainment? And they said, no. He said, find some entertainment, because I want Jews and Christians to see we've got room in our religion. You know, that we're not uptight, that it's not an uptight faith. And that was important for him, of how his religion was perceived by others. That is not an insignificant hadith, that the Prophet was concerned with how people saw the religion. There are, unfortunately, some Muslims that could care less how other people view their faith. But I care very deeply about how other people view my faith, because it's a beautiful faith, and whether they embrace it or not, I would like to see people recognizing the beauty of the Islamic tradition, of its architecture, of its clothing, of its calligraphy, of its food, of its music, of all the various expressions, and of its devotion, of its simplicity. All of those things that make Islam the stunning faith that it is, and that's nourished me for the last 32 years of my life. But this poem is a poem by one of my favorite poets, Robert Frost, and it's called The Fear of God. And I say this really as a reminder to us at Zaytuna at what we're embarking on. Robert Frost writes, if you should go from nowhere up to somewhere, from being no one up to being someone, be sure to repeat to yourself you owe it to an arbitrary God, whose mercy to you rather than to others won't bear too critical examination. Stay unassuming. If for lack of license to wear the uniform of who you are, you should be tempted to make up for it in a subordinating look or tone, beware of coming too much to the surface and using for apparel what was meant to be the curtain of the inmost soul. Humility is the great quality of our Prophet. He said, I was commanded to be humble so that no one would show arrogance over any other. He said, be humble for the sake of God, and God will elevate you. I really hope that we set out humbled with the task that is ahead. It's an immense task. And I'm humbled by the presence of the people that have come, by Dr. James and Rabbi Michael Lerner from these great faith traditions that went before Islam, Judaism, and Christianity, and by all of you for coming out. Thank you, and really thank this extraordinary group of young people. It's a very diverse group, and I'm really hoping that we can serve them as well as they're expecting us to. May Allah bless all of you. May your Ramadan be blessed. Thank you. Jazakumullah khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi.
To conclude this evening, we have our last speaker, which is one of the faculty, Ustadh Abdullah bin Hamid Ali. Is actually the only Western graduate of the Sharia faculty of the University of Al-Qayrawan, located in Fez, Morocco. He specializes in Islamic legal theory, dialectical theology, and Maliki jurisprudence. He is currently completing his graduate study at the Graduate Theological Union in Berkeley. He would lead us in the concluding dua, supplication, for concluding this evening. Bismillah.
اللهم أحسن عاقبتنا في أمورنا كلها وأجرنا من خزي الدنيا وعذاب الآخرة. اللهم باعد بيننا وبين خطايانا كما بعدت بين المشرق والمغرب. O Allah, distance us from our sins in the same way that you have created distance between East and West. اللهم إنا نسألك خير المسألة وخير الدعاء وخير النجاح وخير العمل وخير الثواب وخير الحياة وخير الممات. O Allah, we ask you the best of petitions, the best of supplications, the best of success, the best of works, the best of rewards, and the best in life, and the best after death. Allahumma thabbitna wa haqiq imanana wa thaqil mawazinana warfa' darajatina waghfir lana khati'atina. Oh Allah, we ask you to realize our faith. We ask you to place weight on our scale of good deeds. We ask you to forgive us for our sins. Allahumma inna nas'aluka fawati al-khair wa khawatima wa jawami'ahu wa awwalahu wa akhirah wa zahirahu wa batinah wa nas'aluka ad-darajat al-ula min al-jannati wa manzil al-salih min al-jannati amin. Allahumma inna nas'aluka khalasan min al-nar salimin wa adkhilna al-jannata aminin. Allahumma afina fi ajsadina wa fi asma'ina wa absarina wa fi arwahina wa fi khalqina wa fi khuluqina وفي محيانا ومماتنا وتقبل حسناتنا. Oh Allah, we ask you for good health. We ask you for well-being in our persons and in our sight and in our vision, in our hearing and in our hearts and in our souls. We ask you to correct our deeds, to give us good conduct, to beautify our creation as you beautify our conduct as you beautify our creation. And we ask you to accept our good deeds. اللهم زدنا ولا تنقصنا وأكرمنا ولا توهنا وأعطنا ولا تحرمنا وآثرنا ولا تؤثر علينا وارض عنا. Oh Allah, we ask you to give us increase and not decrease. We ask from you honor and not dishonor. We ask you to give to us and not to deny us. We ask you to give us preference and not to prefer others to us. And we ask for your satisfaction. We ask you for your satisfaction. Allahumma barik fi kulliyati Zaytuna. اللهم بارك في كلية زيتونة وفي أمنائها وفي مؤسسيها وفي منظميها وفي مسيريها وفي موظفيها وفي المتعلمين منهم والمعلمين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. Oh Allah, we ask you to bless Zaytuna College. We ask you to bless its founders, to bless its trustees. We ask you to bless its managers. We ask you to bless its staff. We ask you to bless its faculty and its student body. وجميع الحاضرين في هذا التجمع المبارك الكريم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. And we also ask you to bless all of those present in this noble gathering. We ask you by your mercy, all most merciful of those who show mercy. اللهم إنا نسألك باسمك الطاهر الطيب المبارك الأحب إليك الذي إذا دعيت به أجبت وإذا استرحمت به رحمت وإذا استفرجت به فرجت أن تصلي وتسلم وتبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين وعلينا معهم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. والحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. آمين.
Actually, we have a very good news. We finished the program about 25 minutes than planned. And for a Muslim gathering and for a Muslim college, this is a good beginning. So alhamdulillah, thank you all for being part of this program. And we invite all of you to be part of the support, give us advice, give us counsel, keep us on the straight path as we see and travel to create this great Muslim institution in America. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.